Well, I thank you all for being here tonight. I'm going to try and make better headway than I did last week. So what I've done, I had 45 slides last week and only got through about 38 of them. So I figured a way to overcome that. I've got 51 slides tonight. So I just did the math in reverse and added a few more slides. So we're going to try to get through this tonight. My focus tonight is the land of Israel and what the land looked like and how that affects how they lived and where they lived in the land. And then I'm going to have two more of these presentations. Next Wednesday night, I'm going to look at the kings of the Old Testament primarily and the cities that were significant amongst the kings, such as Lachish, Megiddo, Hazor, Dan. I couldn't go to Bethel because it's all been destroyed. And a couple more cities. I'm going to look primarily at Samaria because that was a significant city, and Jezreel. And so we're going to look at those cities and some things about those cities next week. Then the week after that, we're going to look at Jesus's ministry with a big focus upon his Galilean time and the places he went in the area of Galilee, because we see that much of his ministry was in Galilee. So that's kind of my focus for these last three lessons. I appreciate y'all letting me share these things. Kelly skipped last week, so he's going to fill in anything that I leave out. So, all right, with that, we're going to get started. I've got some reference for you here if you want to do more study or more investigation on this. These are sites, and I'll just mention those. Biblicalplaces.com has a world of photos of and they're all labeled real well. I actually have a few of those in my presentation where I didn't have a picture that I felt that fit what I was wanting to say. Then the Manna Bible Maps, if you're interested in Bible maps, one of the charts I have tonight is from Manna Bible Maps. There's another BibleAtlas.org. I used some of their maps last week. I don't think I have any of them this week. Satellite Bible Atlas is another good map source, and I have some of those maps in this week's presentation. Then there's an organization called Appian Media. I don't know if all of you have heard of them, but they're a group of Christians that have made some videos where they talk about the Bible lands and the kings and the events. They are free to download and to use. They're 5 to 8 minute videos. They would be great for children's classes or even for adult classes if you're on the specific topics. So if you get on appianmedia.org and check out some of their information, they're a great resource. Then on the other side, some people that I have either traveled with or I know, if I get this, Farrell Jenkins, I went on 4 different trips with Farrell. He is retired from traveling, but he has, if you'll search for him on the internet, he has a good Bible blog, and he has lots of information on the Bible lands that he does. Barry Britnell has taken over most of Farrell's travels. If you search for Barry Britnell, if you're interested in making a trip to Israel, search for Barry Britnell on the internet and you'll find his website. And I'll just warn you that you'll have to sign up for 1.5 to 2 years in advance if you're going to get on one of his trips. Luke Chandler is the tour guide that Kelly and I went with this time. Luke Chandler is an archaeologist and a preacher and an excellent student of Israel. When you say Kelly, he's got more information than you can absorb that he'll present on the trips. Luke Chandler also conducts tours. He, like Barry, is booked up for 18 months to 2 years. So you get on, look up Chandler Tours if you want to go with him. Jeremy DeHutt has been talking about starting some tours. Jeremy's over at Louisville. Some of you might know Jeremy. I didn't see anything where he scheduled any tours. And then this last name I put up here, he's not a tour guide. He's an archaeologist and one of the more prominent archaeologists in Israel at this time, Scott Stripling. If you get on the internet and search for Scott Stripling, he has lots of YouTube interviews. I mentioned him last week. He's the lead archaeologist at Shiloh. And if you search for Scott Stripling, and he has some real good discussions about Shiloh. I came back from the trip just all impressed with Shiloh, I guess you can tell, because I didn't know much about Shiloh till we went on this trip. I knew it was there, but so I've been trying to absorb everything I can about Shiloh. That's one of the things, if you take a trip like this, it will spark your interest in things that you had not recognized that were that significant. Shiloh was significant. Now, so those are kind of just some background things I want to mention for those that might be interested in more information. What we're going to look at now, we're going to look at the land of Israel. And if you can see this map over here, we have the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee, and the Jordan River between. And there are three cross sections or across the land, one down to Dead Sea, one about halfway up the Jordan, and the other one up just south of, well, right at the Sea of Galilee. That color doesn't show very well where that section is. And Adam mentioned this. He had this a section very similar he put on the board not long ago in one of his lessons, that this is the Mediterranean Sea. We have the coastal plain. We have the Shephelah. Then we have the hill country and Hebron and Jerusalem and Judah. The land of Judah was primarily up here in the hill country. And then it begins to fall down till we get to the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is about 1,200 feet below sea level. There's a rift, a tectonic plate rift that runs all the way down into Africa through here. And that's why it is so low. We've had a tectonic plate shift there. The Sea of Galilee is below sea level. So nothing ever runs out of the Dead Sea. It evaporates out of the Dead Sea. And that's why it's a Dead Sea, because it's so much mineral has accumulated over the years from the water evaporating. A problem they're having now in the land is that they are irrigating so much upstream of the Dead Sea that you can walk across the Jordan River almost anytime you want to, where it goes into the Dead Sea. There's virtually no water going into the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea, it was 10 years ago that it was in 2010, so it was 12 years ago that I was there, and the Dead Sea is lower than it was when I was there 12 years ago because the evaporation and very little water coming in. So anyway, what this does, it affects the land. The prevailing winds are off the Mediterranean Sea here. And so they have this mountain range. As the clouds rise, we get plenty of rain on this side of the mountains. It's lush and green. But once you top the mountains, as the clouds come back down, the air expands. And if you studied thermodynamics, you know, whenever a volume expands, it can hold more moisture. When it's compressed, it compresses the water out of it. So when it comes up, the air is compressed and it rains, goes on the backside. And this backside over here and all the way over to here is desert land. And we'll see, I'm going to show you some pictures on it in just a moment. So we're going to look at all the way up through here, sections through here first of all, and then we'll try to move along. This affects how they use the land, and that's why I think it's important. Okay, so we're going to start this map. First picture I have is over in this region. This is the greens don't show up very well, but you can see this area all up the plain here, and this is where the Philistines live. And the Philistines were well established there because they had good land to live in, and they were prosperous. And so the Israelites had a hard time dealing with the Philistines because they were so established. And the fertile land on the coast is probably one of the things that contributed to that. So I'm going to show you a picture there. And this is this is near Lachish, which was one of the more southern cities. and you see the fertile green out here. This is all crop land. And this is, we're going to talk more about it when we talk about the kings. This is the road to Egypt. And that's really why Lachish is here. And so you see the land there. So it was a very fertile area and good land. Then the other picture I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you a group of pictures over here on the western side of the Dead Sea. You know, we're going to have a 3 or 4 shots over there just to get you to see. Okay, not much here, right? This is Masada. Masada is a flat top mountain that Herod built a resort a resort for himself out there. Later, he abandoned it, and the Jews took it over at the time of the persecution and destruction of Jerusalem. This was where the last stand of the Jews were in between 70 and 75 AD. And so that's an interesting place to go in and of itself. But you see the land, it is very, very arid, and it's desert. This is sitting on Masada, or standing on Masada and looking out. That's looking at the Dead Sea from Masada, the Dead Sea here. And you see just a little bit of green down here. The only places you see green on this side of the mountains is where there's a spring coming out of the mountains. And okay, this next picture is Qumran. And you've heard of Qumran, right? That's where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. And this is one of the buildings there at Qumran that they've excavated. But just look in the background of the same type of thing as at Masada. This is actually cave number 4 in Qumran, where they found some of the Dead Sea Scrolls in Qumran. This is the people who lived in Qumran. They were a religious group or religious sect of Jews, and this was a purification pool where they had steps and walk down into it, and they would purify you. And in Jesus' day, the Jews were very big on purification, and so they had pools there. And I always thought this is a scribe's table. It's carved out of a piece of solid rock. And these are some of the urns that they actually found scrolls in there in Qumran. So I think that was, to me, that was another one of those highlights. You go a place, you've heard about these for years, you actually see a cave where they had found them, and then see some of the urns the scrolls were in. I'll have pictures of some of the scrolls later. Those are in the ones I saw were in the Israeli Museum. This next picture is in Gedi. Who can remember what's significant about En Gedi? Yeah.
That's where Solomon had his fleet of ships.
Well, En Gedi was it En Gedi? Maybe I'm wrong on that. Well, this where David hid in the cave. Okay. So if he had his fleet of ships that had been on Dead Sea. Yeah, he did have a fleet of ships on Dead Sea. Yeah, it is right. But this is they think the cave that David hid in when he was running from Saul. But you see the reason why he would have hid there. If it wasn't this one, is one similar to this. But you see this green here, and the green here means there's moisture seeping out of the hills and moisture coming out of the cave. And that's so critical to life over here in the desert. Everything, every place you see people who lived in the desert, they had to have a source of water because there's just not much water there. Oh, okay. Let me go back to, if I can go backwards here. I'm going forwards. This thing works backwards. Okay, we're just barely above the Dead Sea in the parking lot or on the road here. Dead Sea's, depending on how, it's about 1,200 feet below sea level. So you're starting with a negative 1,200. You got to add 1,200 every height. These hills here, I think, are about 1,800 feet above sea level. So we're looking at about 3,000 feet. And Jerusalem sits not on this hill, but it sits up here. So when you're going from Jericho to Jerusalem, this is what you're walking up, and you're going uphill all the way. And it's dry, and so you might have a spring or something along the way, but it's a desert place. And that's what, when Jesus's story about the Good Samaritan, isn't that? Okay. Now I'm going to go up to the hill country. This is up in Jerusalem is right about here, where Samuel lived, or Ramah is here, where the tabernacle was at Shiloh is over in here. And this is the way the hill country looks. It's rolling, it's got some green. This is actually picture taken standing in Shiloh, in the site of Shiloh, looking out over the hill. It was convened at that day as there's a flock of sheep down here, so it makes it really look authentic in Shiloh. And then that's very similar look. I must have had two shots of this. No, that's a little different angle. And this I wanted to show you. It doesn't show up real well, but the slopes on the hills, let me go back. You see it's upon the flats, it's the agriculture, but the hills get steep on the edges. They're very rocky. But on the slopes, they have picked up the stones and they've made terraces. And these are olive trees growing on the terraces. And so they were able to utilize the land by terracing it that way. And apparently that's the way they have done. That's another picture of the terraced land. So you have the fertile plain, you have the hills that have green, but it's primarily for grazing sheep and for growing olive trees. You don't have the wide open fields. And then you have this side over next to the Jordan River, the Dead Sea. From here, I'm going to jump up to the Jezreel Valley. You've heard of the Jezreel Valley a lot in the Old Testament. And the Jezreel Valley is this valley. This is Mount Carmel here, and it's this beautiful big valley up here that connects with the Herod Valley that goes down to the Jordan River. I believe Luke Chandler mentioned that there were 26 battles that were fought in the Jezreel Valley. And it's lined all around. The Jezreel Valley is lined around with, you've got Samaria is here, Mount Carmel's there, Nazareth is here, Mount Gilboa is here. So the places you hear about are all around the Jezreel Valley. And Jezreel itself is right here in about the middle of the valley. And so this was a significant place, a very fertile place. I've got some, this is a better blow up of it here. You can see all the represented in green here is really beautiful agricultural land today. Other thing, the city of Megiddo is, I don't want to forget Megiddo. Megiddo is right here. There is a pass from the Lion River that comes from Megiddo back down to the plains. It's the only good pass between the plains that goes to Egypt and the way out to the north. Either you go out this pass and up that way, or you go out through here. And if you're going over to Babylon and Assyria, you would go this way. If you're going around to Asia Minor, you would go that way. in those days, there's a road around the point now of here at Mount Carmel, but in those days, there was not a road around the point in Mount Carmel. So everything had to come through Megiddo. So now you're beginning to see why there were so many battles fought in the valley of Megiddo. When the Greeks would come down, they'd come down this way to come into the land. The Assyrians and the Babylonians would come down this way to come into the land. And the Egyptian would come up this way to either go up north or to go around this way. And so remember Josiah, he knew that the Egyptians had to pass through the Megiddo Pass. And he came up here to engage Pharaoh Necho, and he got killed. And it's all to the shape of the land and the things that were going on there. Here's some panoramas. I got these off of biblicalplaces.com, and you can see the lush greenness in the valley. This one is taken standing on Mount Carmel, looking back to the southeast. This one, let's see. That was from Mount Carmel. This one, I believe, is from I can't remember where. I didn't label where that one's from. It's from the Mount Gilboa, I think. And then this next one is from the Nazareth Ridge. And so you can see out over the valley how beautiful and lush it is. And here is just another map. Everything that's in the green is down low, and it's lush and green, and everything in the white and the yellow is up high. And so one of them was taken here from the Nazareth Ridge. One of them was taken from Beth Shem, looking over the Herod Valley, and the other one was taken from Mount Carmel, looking down in the Jezreel Valley. So you see probably why. And another thing I'll notice that the things that we've got Nazareth, we got Mount Tabor, we got Mount Carmel, we got Megiddo, Samaria is here, we got Bethshan, Endor, the witch of Endor was here. So everything is around in this area. So many places are mentioned in the Bible are surrounding the Jezreel Valley. And Jezreel is here. And what's the most famous thing that ever happened to Jezreel? Somebody help me. To me, the most famous thing. That's where Jezebel got thrown off the wall at Ahab's palace in Jezreel. And that's where Elijah ran from Mount Carmel to Jezreel, and he beat Ahab in his chariot. Pretty good little trot. Okay, you see, these things to me are just extremely interesting to see these places that these things took place. Next, I'm going to talk about a little bit about the Sea of Galilee in northern Israel. That Jezreel, south, the Sea of Galilee, and northern we have you can come around go through the Herod Valley to get over to the Jordan Valley, and then you can come up into the Sea of Galilee. This area is an extension of the hill country, and it's very hilly. Nazareth is up here in the hills, and when you're in down to Sea of Galilee, it's uphill all the way to Nazareth. Now, when Jesus went from Nazareth to down to the sea, it was a good way to go. But going back to Nazareth, it was uphill again. The Sea of Galilee is about, if my numbers are correct, it's about 500 feet below sea level. And Nazareth is again about 2,500 feet. And so you're doing a 3,000 feet ascent if you're going up to Nazareth. Wrong direction. Okay, this is standing on a hill just to the west of the Sea of Galilee and looking down on the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is a beautiful sea. It's so beautiful because it's got fresh water coming in from the snow melt on Mount Hermon, goes through the Sea of Galilee and comes out into the Jordan River, and then they start pumping it all out between Israel and Jordan before it gets to the Dead Sea. And this is the south end of the Dead Sea, or south end of the Sea of Galilee. This is the very south tip that goes back into the Jordan River. But you see, it is a beautiful, fertile land around there. And this is the on the east side, or this is in the Sea of Galilee, looking at the east side. Now, just note in this area, you've got the fertile valley, but then when you get up on the hills again, you're back into the desert on the east side. And this is the hill country up toward Nazareth. You've got the green hills, and it's lush up in that area. But I want you to notice, you wonder where they found the rocks to build everything. There are rocks everywhere on the hillsides in Israel. So there's plenty of rocks to build whatever you want to build. And so whenever I always wondered how they got the rocks to build their altars, and they were not allowed to hew the rocks. They had to be natural stones. They just go out there and find them and build them because there's stones laying everywhere over there on the hillsides. All right, that's kind of gives you a feel of what the land is like from the south to the north. The most important thing in any land is water. You cannot live without water. And you take a land that is arid, water becomes extremely important. So this next few things, I'm going to focus a little bit on water. We have some springs, we have wells, we have cisterns, and we have aqueducts, which were a modern thing. They were a Roman thing. And I just put this up because I remember reading this. Moving water is living water. So if you have a spring or a spring-fed well, it's living water. If you have a cistern, it's not living water. The Jews would drink living water, but they would not drink cistern water. They would use cistern water for purification or for cleaning things, but it was not living water. Now that's probably a pretty ingenious hygiene thing, because water in cisterns can go stale. They didn't have chlorination, and we use a lot of cisterns now, but it's all been chlorinated. But that was something I found interesting. Plus, I think I mentioned it back when we studied in the book of John. And Jesus, when he was talking about living water in Jerusalem at the Feast of the Tabernacles, they got their water for their ceremony from the Gihon spring, which was living water. And so that was something he used as I believe intentionally, and because that was a concept that they were familiar with, the water that gave life. Was that. So one of the first water things that we have Jacob's well and things like that, but amongst the cities, I'm going to focus now just on the cities, the walled cities. When David came to the Jebusite city to conquer the Jebusite city, they had a water system, and this is a artist concept of what it looked like based on some archaeological work and that. But they had a walled, the Gihon Spring was here. The Gihon Spring is still now active in Jerusalem, but it was the main spring for their city, and they had a fortress built around that as a part of the wall of the city. And remember when David and his men came up here to the Jebusite city, what the Jebusites said to David. said, our lame and our blind can defend our city. Well, David challenged his men to enter the city through the water system. Somehow they got inside the water system. There was a tunnel here that the Canaanites had dug into the city, and they came up in the city in the night, unbeknownst to the Jebusites. So this is a common practice to have a water system that is protected. And of course, that's important because in a time of siege, you had one of your main defenses was to close the walls and the gates and stay put, and maybe they would get tired and leave. But if you didn't have enough water, it wouldn't take long that you'd be die of thirst, dehydration. And so that became really an important element for them. This is a picture, there are a couple of pictures here. This is the Canaanite tunnel that tourists can walk through now that the Canaanites had dug. There's another tunnel that's deeper. When Hezekiah, Kelly and I did not walk through that tunnel because it had water in it. We didn't have old shoes on to walk in that tunnel. But Hezekiah had a tunnel dug when the Sennacherib was coming. He's going to close the city up. He had a tunnel dug to protect, or so they could have water supply in the city. It's deeper than this one. Well, you can walk through both of those. This one's dry. This is the Canaanite tunnel. It comes out at the pool of Siloam, which is just to the left of this picture. Here is the channel in the rock, and if you can see good, you can see the water flowing from the Gihon spring by the pool of Siloam. And there was a diversion up there where they could let the water out into the pool of Siloam. And this is where people got their drinking water and their purification water and their wash water. Whatever water they used, they could get out of this channel or the pool of Siloam in Jerusalem. So I'm just fascinated with their water systems. This is the water system for Megiddo. Megiddo again was a walled city we saw up on the Jezreel Valley, on a hill on the edge of the Jezreel Valley. They had dug a deep hole. Now they didn't have this nice concrete steps and this wrought iron railing. They had steps carved into the rock all the way down into this, and you would go down there with your jar or whatever and get you some water and carry it back up. And here's the pool of water at the bottom of all of that. And so we were able to go down and go through that. But it shows you the significance and what effort they went to protect their water supply. This one is the one at Hazor. It shows that there's shaft coming down in the pool of water here. Well, again, somebody's put concrete railings so as tourists can go down there and not injure ourselves in that. Jericho. Jericho was an oasis. It's called the City of Palms because there's water supply there. This is the Elisha Spring in Jericho. And this spring Jericho is one of the oldest cities in the world. This is one of the oldest known springs in the world and is still running water at Jericho. And you see how they've decorated the city. I don't know if they get their drinking water there, but it's a beautiful tourist attraction now. But see, water, how it draws a crowd. This next one is the spring that Gideon and his men drank out of. How do you know that? Well, it's where they said where Gideon went to drink out of the spring. And the tourists today put their feet in it rather than drinking out of it. But our smiling face there. This is a spring in Jerusalem that they assured us that John the Baptist drank out of. And Mary would have drunk out of this spring. It's at the edge of Jerusalem. And so it's a spring that's been there that long. And to me, it's interesting how these springs are and how beautiful they are. I like this picture. This is a well out in out in the country. And it didn't have a grate over it in the days that they were using it. But you see, I've got this picture because you see all the way around the edges of this rock, you've got these little grooves in it. Well, if you close up of them, those were worn there by ropes pulling the jars up out of the water. Now, it's that way all the way around. So how many people have drawn water out of that well? And again, that puts an exclamation mark on the importance of water. How many sheep have been watered here at this? And these are the watering troughs that are hewn out of stone sitting around that. And so gives you, so Jesus goes, meets the woman at the well. The well is deep and you don't have anything to draw with. You don't have a bucket or a pot on a rope. And that just comes to life to me. That well probably had those rope notches around it where it had been worn with drawing water. And finally, the Romans came, they built aqueducts. The Romans were great builders. This is an aqueduct that feeds Caesarea Maritime. We'll talk a little bit more about it later. I want to talk now about some tombs. We're familiar with rolling the stone away, right? Tombs that had rolling stones are a fairly common thing in Israel from that era. And this is one that was out in the countryside that to me was a beautiful example of this. This is 99% sure this was not the tomb that Jesus was in because it's too far out of Jerusalem. This is the traditional tomb that, tradition has a location, exact location for everything. This is the traditional tomb. This is called the garden tomb. And it has over the years had some damage to it. The stone is over here out of the way, but it's had some damage. They've tried to repair it. You go inside, there's 3 or 4 crypts in there where you could lay somebody. That's this is very near, or this is actually in the walled city now. It would have been outside the city whenever Jesus, and there's the stone that rolled across that. This next tomb is the Herodian family tomb. And you see it had a large rolling stone that came down and rolled across the door. So you kind of get an idea of what the tombs would look like. And of course, John the Baptist was in the souvenir business, right? I've never been on a trip yet. Somebody wasn't in the souvenir business. I just thought that to be interesting. Olives, very significant in Israel and all the Middle East. Olive oil was. It was a 2-step process to get olive oil. First, you would put the olives in they had a hewn rock and they'd hewn out a pit, and then they had a large round stone, and they had this from ceiling to the rock, and they had that through it. And either a person would push it or hook an animal to it, and they'd dump a bunch of olives in there, and it would crush the olives. Then they would take them out of that, and they'd put them in baskets, and they'd put them under here, and it would be a timber that came down and put pressure on the baskets. And then that would allow the pressure to stay on the baskets, allow the oil to drip out of the baskets. And they would do it 3 times. And so they would add weight to it. So they start with one weight, and that's the first pressing was always the best olive oil. And that was the olive oil. Those of you use olive oil, you want the first pressing. And I think if you look in the Leviticus, it had something to do with the oil that the priest used was the first oil too. Then they would drain that all off, and they'd add another weight to it. These have ways of adding a weight to it, and they'd get another pressing. And then they would add the third weight and really squeeze out all the old dregs and the brown oil in the bottom. And so that was, to me, that was interesting. Okay, we made it through all 51 slides. I don't know about you all, but I enjoyed going through this with you. I hope that it's been educational and been a benefit to you. I think all of these things, you see how they pertain to life in the biblical times. Thank you.